All right, so before we jump into it, just a quick overview as to who we are. Brad and I are the owners of West Peak Properties. We've been working together since 2009. What we do is we're a full-service brokerage company. We help clients buy and sell mainly investment real estate from on the small end of condos all the way up to 20, 30 unit apartment buildings. A lot of what we do is help grow and maximize investor returns because we know rents, what should be, we know how to kind of help get those rents up to higher levels with our clients, give some advice, but then also do 1031 exchanges into larger units to continue to help maximize and grow wealth through real estate. So that's a lot of what we do. And then Sarah is kind of one of our partners in the industry. She runs Performance Properties, so she can give you an overview as to what she does.
Yes, so Performance Property Management has been in business since 1996, and we offer market-leading residential property management services. And we've recently combined forces with Jay and Brad from West Peak Properties, so we can offer sales through our management company as well. And also they have just been wonderful resources for us.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into what we're going to talk about today, and then let's talk about it. Sorry, guys, I haven't been keeping up with my slides. But we're going to hit on 10 things. So the top 10 property management best practices. So we're going to go through attracting the quality tenant, what you're going to, how to determine and what to charge for rent, where do you market, and the do's and don'ts of advertising, qualifying your tenant, dealing with pets. Slide number 6, you'll understand when we get there, but that's being patient if you can. Keeping that good tenant, visiting your properties, enforcing the rules, and handling evictions. And then if we have time at the end, which I think we probably will go through this pretty efficiently, we'll talk briefly about self-managing versus hiring a property manager. So obviously Jay and I have been self-managers for quite some time, and Sarah is the property manager. So we'll get into a little bit of we'll go fight it out at the end. Sarah, why don't you kick us off here with how to attract that quality tenant?
Sure. All right. Number 1 best practice. The most important thing is to make sure that your your rental unit is 100% move-in ready before advertising. You want to make sure you have a professional cleaner come in. I love nothing more to walk into a vacant property and smell a fresh scent of pine sol, something of that sort. Have all the windows open and cleaned. Any repairs that needed to be completed before you advertise should be completed by a skilled contractor. Photos. We definitely recommend professional photos for advertisement purposes. We have brought on many new clients who have given us a call and they've struggled to rent their property. And the first thing I do is go to their advertisement, and they have pictures of the toilet seat up in the bathroom, current tenants' belongings, personal belongings. We don't show a unit until it is 100% move-in ready. We want to set those expectations up front as far as cleanliness and how things should look in the unit. And, just overall, the better quality property you have, more than likely the more you can charge and the better quality tenant you'll get.
Right. This is so important. Jay and I do 90% of our rentals are actually Section 8 tenants. And we even follow this because even Section 8 tenants have choices, of where they're going to live. So if you want that best tenant, even if it's the best Section 8 tenant, you need to have the best looking property for them. And they you want them to want your unit, basically, so that you have choices and you have good choices.
I have often found if you show, in the past, if you show a dirty property to a tenant and they are okay with that, they're just going to pile on that. So again, just set those expectations up front. All right, number two, the second best practice is how to determine what to charge for rent. So there are a lot of free resources out there for you. My favorite are rentometer.com, Zillow, and of course, property management software that we use. I find that Zillow is on the high end, so I'll take that price from Zillow and I can go down from there if needed based on the amenities that the property has. I think it is very important to make sure that you're distinguishing between apartments, condos, and single-family homes. More often than not, a two-bedroom single-family home is definitely going to get more rent than a two-bedroom apartment. For Section 8, that's Brad and Jay's arena, but they've offered you here a resource to check HUD fair market rent. You want to compare your property with other comps, for sure. Just like I said, distinguishing if it's an apartment, a condo, or a single-family home, the amenities that your property offers, things like air conditioning or parking in Capitol Hill area. And know your property and how it competes with surrounding properties. I know Brad wants to elaborate a little on this.
Well, you know, knowing your property and where you fit into the market, right? So some of these apartment complexes are going to have really nice amenities. You know, they're going to have pools, they're going to have workout facilities, et cetera. You're not going to compare your Class C apartment or single family kind of home that is just very, very basic to these types of properties. So just know who you're comparing to. So if you're looking at Rentometer, for example, or Rentometer, or however we want to pronounce that, you know, I think Jay and I use this pretty extensively. We have the pro version of this, and it aggregates most of what's out there being advertised on Zillow and everywhere else to give you kind of an idea of what people are asking for rent, right? And you know, if you're just looking that up and saying, okay, I have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit, you got to make sure that you're not comparing your house to somebody else's apartment or something like that. So you just have to be careful when you're comparing rents that you're pretty much apples to apples. And then one thing that as self-managers we don't have access to that Sarah does is AppFolio. So Sarah, you know, AppFolio is giving you real-time actual data, right? Like talk to us about what you have access to there.
It sure is. So we're able to run something that's called a red match comparison through AppFolio, and anyone else who is currently using that software in the surrounding area, we can pull actual numbers. So it gives us bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, so just to help us compare. Sometimes you see on Zillow or even Rentometer something from 2018 or 2019, and we know the market is changing yearly. So, and also those may not be the actual rents that they received. So it's nice to have real-time, you know, numbers to compare to.
Right. So does anybody out there have questions about charging and what to charge for rent? Right.
What I was going to add on the HUD, on the fair market rents, for people that are not as familiar with Section 8, and if you're considering it, you can go to that exact website that's shown right here, and HUD will update this every year. They update it right at the beginning of the year. You type in your state and the county that you're in, say Jefferson County, and it'll segregate by bedroom count, 2, 3, or 4 bedroom. It'll give you a raw number. So for instance, a 3-bedroom in Jefferson County is, I think, around 2,300. But that's if the housing authority is paying, or I'm sorry, if the housing authority is paying for all of your utilities, so you're paying for the utilities for the tenant. And so what Brad and I get for our 3-bedroom Section 8 units in Lakewood right now, where the tenants are paying gas, electric, and trash, we get $2,100 a month. So just to put that in perspective, you back in a little bit, you lower that number down just based off how much you have the tenant paying utilities. But that's about what you can figure.
So if you were paying all of their electric and gas and all that, then you would be getting $2,300.
Right.
Because you're passing some of that on to the tenant, they're going to pay you a little less. So that's kind of how that HUD thing works. Okay, so let's move on to slide number 3.
All right, where to market and do's and don'ts in advertising. So you want to market on high traffic sites. Appfolio, that property management software we were just talking about, does all of that research for us. There's about 30 different sites that our advertisement will syndicate to, which is wonderful. But my favorite is posting on Zillow. It automatically syndicates to Trulia and HotPads, so you have three avenues for advertising just by posting your unit one time. Facebook Marketplace is becoming more popular. Google, Zumper, Apartments.com. Some of these I've never even heard of, but again, we love that property management software because it helps us with those high traffic sites that we don't normally know about. We do not use Craigslist. It's not regulated. I guess the sites I just mentioned are way more regulated than Craigslist. So there are many scams on Craigslist. In my personal experience, I haven't really found great clientele on there. So we don't use Craigslist anymore for several years now. We still do use professional yard signs. I do think that it depends on the area your property is located. Maybe sometimes you don't want to alert everyone that it's vacant. So we do kind of pick and choose where we put the yard signs. We still post flyers in common areas or mail rooms if we're allowed. Some don'ts in marketing. Do not address demographics, social status, sexual orientation, race, color, religion, all of those things that are against fair housing. You do want to describe any physical attributes of the property or the surrounding area, walkability, proximity to public transportation, if there's parks nearby, things of that sort. You would never want to say something like great for roommates even, or great for a couple. That's discrimination. And right now with COVID, there's a lot of people who are compromised and don't want to be out meeting other people to view properties. So it's nice to offer a video walkthrough of FaceTime showing. I prefer FaceTime. I like to see the person and talk to them and make sure that we can communicate effectively with one another. And for out-of-towners too. I often find that people moving from out of town that are not here in person to view a property aren't very successful in finding a renter. So we have benefited from that many times just simply by offering that FaceTime video or walkthrough video and even just kind of walking around the block so they can see the area.
Yeah, one of the things that's on your list there is Zumper, and I had no experience with Zumper. What's your experience there?
So what I can tell you is through our property management software, it will tell us how the leads come in. So if it came in through Zillow, it's listed on there. So I can go through for each property and see where they're coming from. And I would say a quarter of the inquiries will come through Zumper.
Wow, a quarter.
A quarter. There's lovely.com. There's just so many I haven't even heard of.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been phasing away from Craigslist as well over the last few years and really only focused on Trulia, which then aggregates it out to Zillow and HotPads. But the Facebook Marketplace has been amazing. I've gotten a lot of leads out of that. That's been a great one.
Wonderful.
Which I thought it was just an auction site to sell stuff, but apparently not.
All right, let's see. I don't have any questions on the chat, so I'm going to keep moving on. Guys, if you have questions as you're going, let us know. If you have a question that you came prepared with. Okay, Karen has a question. You have to type it in for us so we can see it. In the meantime, while I'm waiting to get Karen's question, I will move us to the next slide.
All right.
Back to it.
Fourth best practice, do not skip any steps in qualifying a tenant. Very important. So run a credit, criminal, and eviction background check. If you don't have a resource to do that, you need to find one. It's extremely important. A great rule of thumb for us, we require our potential renters to earn 3 times the monthly rental amount per month to qualify financially. That can be a combined income of all of the renters. I honestly believe 100% that during this whole COVID pandemic, holding people to this 3 times the monthly rental amount has helped to ensure that rent gets paid. So we are very strict on that qualification. Checking prior landlord references. I will always call a former landlord and ask if the tenant paid their rent on time each month, if they communicated effectively, kept clean conditions inside the home, and if they would recommend them as a tenant. If they have an animal that is not a service animal or an emotional support animal, I will ask about the dog and the condition of the yard if there's one. Just everything and anything I can do to ensure that I have peace of mind that this renter is going to be a great renter. We actually do ask potentials to send pictures of their current property as well. And I would say 95% of potential renters are so excited to rent our property. They don't mind. They don't have anything to hide, and they'll send us pictures immediately. I have had a few people that don't want to offer up those pictures, and that's concerning to me. Pictures are just peace of mind, right? Interior and exterior. You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely have something to add. So this slide is one of the reasons why we're doing this webinar. Because I cannot tell you how many times I've had clients come to me and say, I have a problem with a tenant. I don't know what to do. Here's the situation. And they'll start telling me what's going on. And inevitably, when I start digging into this, they skipped one of these steps before they put that tenant in there. You know, they either listened to this tenant's story, or they didn't check the landlord references, or they saw something they didn't like on the background check, but they let them in anyway. It's just, and a lot of this, what we're going through today is basically ABCs of property management. But the reason why we're doing it, and the reason why we're hitting on these things, is because so many people know what they should do and they don't do them, right? So this is just one of those things that there's only 4 things on this list. And you've got to do them all. You know what I mean? So that's all I have to say about that. You know, we even do this stuff with our Section 8 tenants. We check them just like anybody else. We know that they're not going to have great credit, and we're okay with that because, you know, most of their rent is being paid by somebody else. But we do like to see that they have some form of employment, that they take care of their previous place, that they're, you know what I mean, that they're responsible people. And so that's all I have to add. Jay, you got anything else?
Yeah, certainly the landlord references. I mean, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and thank God that I've had some previous landlords save me from just absolute disasters, because everything on paper looked great, and the background looked fine, and you know, for the most part, most of the boxes checked. But when you talk to that previous landlord, you know, and I think we're all, fortunately for us self-managing owners, we're pretty honest with each other. And I don't feel like I've ever been duped where I'm calling their supposed landlord, who's the uncle or dad or whoever else. Maybe it's happened, but I have had some landlords, a few in the past, say I would not rent to them. Their kids were Tasmanian devils. They broke things all the time, or they scratched our hardwood floors. I mean, it's some of this inside stuff that you just would not know, period, if it wasn't for talking with the previous landlord. And the final question I always ask is, would you rent to them again? And you get a direct answer, yes or no. So
guys, we have a couple of questions. So Dave wants to know if we have a company we recommend for background checks. You know, Jay and I are members of the Apartment Association of Metro Denver. Through that association, I use an application or a service called Smart Move that'll
Yeah.
do the background check. I don't know, Jay, if you use somebody different.
Yep, that's it.
And then Sarah, are you?
I go through Appfolio, our property management software, so it does everything for us. I do have one thing to add. Brad and I's opinion, I think, differs here. With our Section 8 tenants, we do require their credit to be in good standing. We don't ever necessarily give a score. We just say that everything needs to be in the positive. So we still do hold our Section 8 tenants to those high standards. The only thing that we waive is the financial responsibility because they have that being covered, but we do as well like to see that they have some form of employment. A lot of times for us, they do pay some of their utilities. So we really just hold everyone to the same standard for the most part.
And Karen has a question. So she said, do you think that the previous landlords can be honest all the time when they're trying to get rid of a bad tenant? I think that's a incredibly great question.
Yep.
And I think the answer to that is no. They're not always going to be completely honest with you.
Right.
But that's why you have to do all four anyway. I mean, all you can do is what you can do, right? If you don't call them and you don't ask the question, you'll never know one way or the other, even if you might not be able to completely believe them. But you'll probably get a feel for that when you talk to them. Like when I talk to them, I can kind of tell if somebody's not giving me full information.
Right.
Pictures. Also requesting those pictures of their current property.
Right.
It really helps. I think you guys may visit. Is that whatever? Do I remember that correctly?
Yep.
I have done it before. I don't know if it's breaking any kind of laws, but I've done it before. And I mean, I've heard other property managers say it's okay. So
as long as it's normal practice, it's okay.
Yeah, I have a tenant in Colorado Springs at a townhome that she's a cleaning lady, and I checked her place, and yep, she's a cleaning lady because it was pretty clean. So she's a good tenant.
All right. Hey, so moving on, Wendy has a question about Section 8. So she uses Go Section 8. I guess there's a website or some sort of service there to try to find a tenant. You know, what I would say about that is I advertise for Section 8 the same way I advertise for anybody else, on the same sites, in the same ways. I have used sites before that are specific to Section 8. I don't really tend to get a lot of applicants through that for some reason. So I don't know that those are great.
Like Aurora Housing or Denver Housing, you can advertise through there.
Right.
And then let's see. Also on Section 8, allowable seems higher than our price. I wonder why. Oh, I'm not sure, Wendy, what your question is there. Also on Section 8, their allowable seems always higher than our price.
In other words, the Section 8 rent is higher than the market, which is true sometimes. I mean, Brad and I know most of the directors personally of the housing agencies, and Ismail Guerrero, who used to be part of Denver Housing, he did tell me, it was over a year or two ago, that, yep, they were paying like 5% above the standard market rent of that equivalent unit because there's a lot of demand and there's a lot of landlords that will not accept Section 8. And we get it, but Brad and I have been doing it for almost 10 years. And of course, you get some bad apples out there, but most of them are pretty good. So you can be as choosy with Section 8 as you want to be with any other kind of tenant. So
also with the allowable rent. So if they say, okay, in Arapahoe County for a 3-bedroom unit, your allowable rent is $2,300 a month or whatever it is, right? I'm just throwing out numbers. You know, again, you got to back out your utilities if they're paying some of their own utilities, so you may not get that full amount. And then also they'll do a check. They're supposed to do a fair market assessment, you know, around the area to see if you're above fair market. I've never had a housing authority tell me that I was charging more than fair market, but there's probably some out there that actually do that check. And if the rents around you are lower than what they allow, they may back you down a little bit. All right, let's check on the next. So pets. Let's talk about pets. We're not going to get any questions about pets, are we, Sarah?
All right, pets versus no pets. So the first thing to know is that you must accept an emotional support animal and or a service animal. We do suggest that you consult your attorney to understand the reason why and appropriate documentation that you can or cannot request. Pet-friendly units, we charge a $500 refundable pet deposit per pet. We like to take into account how much the regular security deposit is in addition to the pet deposit, and an overview of the property to determine if that would be enough money to refinish a hardwood floor or recarpet the house if there were pet damage. So we really try to make sure that it adds up, the deposit adds up to, the deposit is enough to cover the amount of damage that could occur. We do try to limit the number of pets, no more than one pet. If you do an inspection of your unit and your lease says no pets and you find a pet there.
That's never happened to me.
Right. It's never happened to anyone, right? It is a bit crazy these days. If you find a pet there, you post them with the 10-day demand for compliance. Let them know that the pet needs to leave the property immediately, and they provide you with documentation for support animal and emotional support animal. Again, we recommend you consult your attorney, but my understanding is you cannot make the pet leave. So the way to get around that is to simply not renew their lease when their lease comes up for renewal. You are not required to give them any reason for non-renewal of lease. Simply just a 30-day notice to vacate, or however, whatever your lease terms are for that. Things to consider in determining if your unit is going to be pet friendly or not pet friendly. Your HOA rules and regulations. Sometimes they have size or weight limits, breed restrictions, the homeowner's insurance regulations. So we'll go back to that in a second. I know Brad can elaborate on that. Of course, your city and county laws you need to take into account. And then we talked about those 10-day demand for compliance for non-authorized pets if they're not emotional support animals or service animals.
Right. So the homeowner's insurance thing, inevitably when anybody gets a pet for one of our units, it's never a Chihuahua. It's always a pit bull. Mm-hmm. And you need to check your homeowner's association or your homeowner's insurance, because most homeowners insurance will not cover what they consider to be a dangerous animal. And some will list, Rottweilers, pit bulls, German Shepherds, sometimes, things like that, where they feel like that's an aggressive animal and they don't want to insure over that. If that's the case, and I've had this happen to me recently, and I was willing to allow the tenant in this particular case to keep the animal, I required her to get her own renter's insurance that covered the liability of the animal in the event that something did happen, and name me as an additional insured. So just be aware that there could be a liability out there if you're allowing somebody to have a pet and it's not covered under your homeowner's insurance.
One thing I forgot to mention was pet rent, basically, or monthly pet-free non-refundable versus a refundable pet deposit. I like the refundable pet deposit. Responsible pet owners are typically fine to pay that deposit, especially knowing they're going to get it back. I would like to believe that ensures they take better care of the property, but I know Brad and Jay choose to go with a monthly pet rent.
Well, we do both. So I do a non-refundable deposit because I'm trying to dissuade them from keeping the animal, and then I also charge them a pet rent. And even with Section 8, I've been in touch with my housing specialist for a specific tenant and said, hey, this person has a dog, can I charge them additional pet rent? And I've been told I can.
You can. Yes, right.
Been told I can, yeah.
Yeah.
So just based on that experience, I try to do whatever I can to dissuade them. You know, it's expensive to have a pet, you know. I don't really want to get into philosophies here, but, you know, it gets expensive to have a pet. So if, you know, it becomes cost prohibitive, they might make a different decision on their own.
Mm-hmm. Right.
No questions about pets? Are they popping up?
Well, hang on a second. I'm looking at the Q&A now. They didn't pop up in the, I got two versions.
Typical charge for pet rent.
Yeah, go ahead and answer that one, Jay, and I'll.
I don't charge for pet rent myself. I do a non-refundable, like Brad just said.
I usually do 25 to 50 bucks a month.
Yeah, that's standard.
And you do typically want to limit it to 1 or 2 at the most. Any more than 2, it's going to be really destructive.
Yeah, I think that we did have a couple of questions on the Q&A, but we answered them, I believe. One was pit bulls and insurance, and one was pet deposit and a pet rent. So, Barbara was, let's see, different county, Section 8. Barbara, I'll answer that question on your Section 8 separately, if you don't mind, so we can keep moving.
All right, the 6th best practice here. Be patient, the right tenant will come along. So I think first and foremost, the content of your advertisement really helps to attract the ideal tenants rather. So mentioning the park, accessibility, close proximity to the park across the street, maybe the disc golf course, the golf course, community centered, things of that sort. Just those physical attributes that we talked about, park-like backyard, lovely front porch. If you're having difficulty, I think, renting your unit, things to consider that may boost the interest are perhaps allowing a pet. You could always lower the rent a bit or include utilities. People think they're getting a deal when you say all utilities included in capital letters. I think for performance, because we're more regulated as a property management company, we can't necessarily wait around for the right tenant. If we've effectively communicated our expectations and our criteria for qualifying, we can't keep them waiting. We have to give them a response a yay or nay within 48 hours. I think being an independent owner, you may have a little more freedom there. One of the ways that we get around perhaps not approving an ideal tenant is that our properties are always available for immediate rental. So if we have a couple applicants and one can't move into the next month, we're looking to fill that property right away to get the most money we can for the owner. But I feel that just communicating the criteria effectively and the qualifications typically leads us to a great renter.
So the way a property management company would have to handle this is they put out their criteria. Here's the criteria for the unit. If a tenant comes along with the proper criteria for the unit, that being credit, background, financial, whatever it is, right? Then you'll rent to them. That's it, right? So for me and Jay, if we're managing our own, right, and we have 2 equally qualified tenants that come to us, but one has a pet and one doesn't, I don't know, maybe we get to decide versus having to go with the guy that came in the door first, that type of thing. But You know,
There are ways to help us get the tenant that we're looking for. I'll just put it that way. But
right?
again, if we've communicated effectively the do's and don'ts and what they need, it typically does lead to the renter that would be fine for the property.
Like Dave's comment there, good control by Sarah. Okay, I'm going to exercise the same control in answering Karen's question about waiting around for someone with fewer occupants.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a familial status scenario,
Right.
and I would never tell anyone else to discriminate based on familial status. That's all I'm going to say about that.
But the key is to be patient.
Right. We have the ability to be patient as individual owners and wait for all the applicants to come in, right? And then figure out who's the best candidate for us, right? A property management company doesn't always have that ability to do that.
But more than likely, if they're not ideal, there is at least one reason we can deny them. Their credit wasn't up to par. They have a recent negative mark on their credit.
Right.
The landlord didn't give them a good reference. Something doesn't add up.
More than likely, you can find a reason. Yeah, I get that. So yeah, we're able to just be patient, a little bit more patient, generally speaking. When you do that, you do run the risk that you're going to lose somebody because they might find another place, etc. But again, that's something that we get people coming to us all the time saying, "Oh, my tenant didn't work out," and owners tend to get panicky and they start to think, "Oh my God, I've got a vacant unit coming up and I have to fill this thing, and so I'm going to market it before it's vacant. I'm going to turn it around in 2 weeks and I'm going to take the first guy that comes along and all that stuff." And this is where you kind of get yourself into trouble sometimes is, just make sure that unit is ready before you advertise it. Make sure that you're looking at all the applicants and not just, the first one. And make sure you're taking your time to background check them. Just, that's what we mean by this slide. Just be patient and you'll find the right tenant, and that's going to reduce your turnover so that you're not doing this every year. Make sense?
Well, another quick answer to Karen's question on that is with some of our duplex units in Lakewood, which are mainly 3-bedroom units, we'll sometimes have families with parents and say 4 kids or 5 kids. It's like my usual answer to that is, look, I appreciate you inquiring about the property, but I have a limit of 5 or a limit of 4 or whatever. I can't have 7 people living in a 3-bedroom place. It's just going to be too destructive. So that's generally how I answer that.
Can you do that, Sarah? What's your answer to that?
I think general rule of thumb is 2 per bedroom, 2 plus 1 on occasion if they have an infant or smaller child. I've been reading up on this a little bit. If there's adequate space in the bedroom, adequate beds for the child. No one's ever challenged us really, but again, if there's a huge family, sometimes just something doesn't add up. The credit isn't good or something, so there is another way around that. If everyone's qualified and there's enough room, it is okay.
Yeah.
But,
Well, to answer again to what you're saying, Karen, you're correct. HUD requires parents with kids to double up the kids right now anyway in the rooms to a certain age level. Once they reach a certain age, then they can branch off in their own bedrooms. So you're right. As children, they do double them up. But once they reach teenage level, basically, no, they don't do that.
All right, once you've found that good tenant, let's figure out how to keep them, right?
all right, I'm going to go back to what I've been saying. Set the expectations up front. Let the renters know that they have to water the yard out front 3 times a week at least, whatever the rules and regulations are for the city or county. We'll be doing drive-bys to make sure that the yard is in order. Rent is due on the 1st. There's 10 different options to pay, no excuse not to pay. If you cannot pay, you need to contact us ahead of time. And you need to be available. If we are qualifying these tenants, they're meeting all of our criteria, they're paying their hard-earned money to rent your property, you need to be responsible and available to them. Any maintenance needs that arise, you need to be quick to respond. We are very fortunate these days, 24-hour, within 24 hours, emergencies are typically same day. We have some great contractors, some great vendors that we work with. People want you to be responsive to their maintenance needs. So if you can't get someone there today, communicate with them that you'll get someone there tomorrow. Make sure you use a qualified contractor. You don't want to bring in someone who doesn't know what they're doing and is going to spend an hour or two wasting their time trying to figure something out. Just bring in someone skilled. It's worth the $40 more you're going to pay. Someone clean and qualified. This was Brad's line, be understanding of extenuating circumstances. And And yes, to a point, right? If people are communicating effectively with you, if they're having issues, everybody with us gets like a one-time freebie on late fees. First time late, no problem. Second time, not going to happen. If those things keep arising, those extenuating circumstances, I think it may be time to talk about alternative resolutions. But we're all human and we all have issues sometimes. So important to understand. Make sure you provide a clean and safe environment for people. People stay longer when they feel safe and when things are nice and in working order and clean. The yard of a triplex or something, you should have a service, I think. It's a triplex. Nobody really has any, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but it's not their personal space. For the most part, you should have a service coming and making that property look good and keeping it clean and nice. Be courteous and give proper notice. Never just show up at your tenant's doorstep and demand to go inside. Give them notice, at least 24-hour notice, unless it's an emergency. But still attempt to contact them. And don't micromanage. If you've set those expectations up front, they understand those lease terms. They understand they need to abide by them. I don't think that you need to micromanage because tenants probably, if they may not feel comfortable and stay as long as you would like. Anything you guys want to add? Any questions?
As far as setting expectations goes, here's the conversation that I have is, as long as you take care of my place and are a good neighbor to others, then I'm going to take care of you. Meaning that, if you do have issues sometimes and you are late every once in a while or whatever, then I'm going to work that out with you, right? If you start to become, non-communicative or not a bad neighbor, or I see some property damage, or all that stuff, then it's going to go a different direction. And I think what's important here is we're generally talking about multifamily units. So a property that has more than one tenant in it, a duplex, a triplex, a 20-unit, whatever it is, if they know that you hold everyone else to these same standards, then they know that's going to be a good place to live. So it's important that you enforce the rules for everyone. And that's going to keep them because they're going to want to live there. Does that make sense?
And I would add that part of the being in the trenches aspect that Brad and I deal with is that a lot of our clients are residential multifamily owners that a lot of them do manage their own properties. It's actually kind of half and half, mixed bag. But point being, for the ones that manage their own properties, we sometimes see where owners become too buddy-buddy with the tenant and sit down and have conversations or may have a beer with them or something. And you can do whatever you want, but we would highly suggest not doing that to keep kind of an arm's length interaction, because you want to stress the guidelines and have specific rules in place. And even if you are friendly with your tenants, which you all want to be friendly but still have an arm's length, is look, as Sarah said, I agree. Let a late fee fly for the first time. But if it starts repeating itself, my excuse is, look, you signed the lease and I'd be breaking fair housing laws, because if I'm graceful to you and not to the others, I am therefore breaking fair housing. So I have to enforce whatever is in the lease. So you have to pay that late fee. And even if you're behind on rent, and the COVID's a different situation, we're not talking about that. But in normal markets, I always blame it on fair housing. So there's that. And then secondly, I would add, and Brad and I deal with this with our Section 8 tenants, most of them are good about paying on time, and we have most of them paying through QuickBooks, and I have tenants paying me directly through Venmo, even with Section 8. Communication is number one. If they're not communicating with you that they're going to be late, it just makes us frustrated. But if they give you that communication, and maybe they're 3 days late, usually we'll waive the fee or whatever the circumstance is. We want to understand. The key is communicate.
Both ways, right? So you got to communicate with them too. If there's something that needs to be fixed, you need to fix it. If there's something, you know what I mean? It's amazing how many landlords don't do that. And it's pretty simple. When you have a good tenant, if you're responsive to them, and you take care of them, and you communicate with them what's happening, they're going to want to stay. You know, if you're going to blow them off and they've got some mold or something going on, you know, then they don't want to stay. So it goes both ways, and that's my point. Is, you know, when you set the expectations up front, it goes, hey, you take care of me, I'll take care of you. We take care of each other. We're in this together, and that's how you're going to keep those guys.
Exactly.
We have another slide, a couple of slides later on, you know, enforcing the rules. So we'll get into some more of that as well.
Very important. All right, 8th best practice. Visit your properties twice a year. So the norm for us is we do our leases are 1 year for a 1 year lease term. We do a 3-month initial move-in inspection, and then we do a 90-day inspection for lease renewal purposes. We take pictures each time, and we send those to our owners. If there's anything that needs to be done, we send them a nice organized list with all the pictures, so everyone's in the know. If you have a property management company right now, you should be receiving something like that, something similar, just so you're aware as well as what as far as how the property looks and how the tenants are caring for the property. It does set the expectation that we care and that we want to know what the property looks like. And when we go do inspections, we love that the tenant is there. We like to meet with them. We want to talk with them. The way I start off those inspections, is there anything wrong with the property that you noticed or you haven't told us? And more often than not, they're like, oh, I forgot that sink was leaking or my toilet was running.
Right.
And, and the water bill is really high. So it's important to have those conversations with your tenant, and maybe they're unaware, a lot of people don't look at the exterior of the property. We do the interior and the exterior. I want to see if the gutters are full, if the extensions on the gutters are pulling the water away from the home or it's just dropping by the foundation, if the trees are hanging over the roof. I think tenants don't necessarily know what to look for, so having that conversation with them and pointing those things out are beneficial to both sides. So they can alert you if something's not right. I think more often than not, people maybe are just not in the know. So you can avoid that frustration when you go there and you see all of these things that you don't want to see. But had you communicated those things up front, I think you'd be in a better situation.
Awesome. I don't have anything to add there. We do the exact same thing. Getting in there twice a year is very important. You'll find things that they didn't bring to your attention, and you'll find things they're doing with the unit that you may not like, so you have an opportunity to chat with them about that. I was just at one last week, and the tenants had 2 couches sitting outside.
Yeah, drive-by.
I'm like, those have to go right away. And they were gone. To their credit, they got rid of them right away. But, you know, they'll take license if you're not on them. You got to stay on them. And
Totally.
the best way to do that is with these basically 6-month inspections.
In regards to Benjamin's app, I was looking it up. I'll type it in right now. It's called Simple Inspect. That's what I use.
What is that? I missed it.
Do you use an application for inspections, Sarah?
Oh, okay.
Is there an app that you use?
Documentation, we haven't addressed that at all here. Documentation is so important. If you ever find yourself in a legal battle, legal situation, you should have all your ducks in a row. You know, with that late fee that we talked about, that's documented in the notes on their account. It says first time late waived. So we have record of everything. That is also one benefit of the property management software we use. We can text our residents. It's all date, time stamped, everything. Our phone calls are recorded. We have all the documentation we need. And I know we're all busy and we're running around and you don't have time maybe to take the picture or whatever, but you need that stuff. You need to keep that stuff on file.
So somebody had a question here on inspecting because there's a high water bill. Are you allowed to inspect more frequently? You know, I would say you're allowed to inspect, or at least the way my lease is stated, I'm allowed to inspect or come into the unit pretty much whenever, as long as I give them proper notice. And even without proper notice, if I suspect there's a problem with the property. So, yeah, if I see a high water bill, then yeah, and I'm paying the water, I'm going to want to, the first thing I do is call them. Hey, is your toilet running? Are your kids playing in the sprinklers? Are you running off and leaving the sprinkler running for, 6 hours at a time? Is there a leak? What's going on? And if there's no smoking gun there that they're going to, admit to, then I am going to inspect. But at least they're on notice that's an issue for me. And this happened to me. This happened to me in the spring, like in March, I think, of this year. I had a tenant come to me and say, my hose bibs, I'm trying to water the lawn, but I don't really have any water pressure.
Yeah.
Well, how long has this been going on, Megan? Oh, probably for, I was doing it last summer. Right? Didn't talk to me about it, didn't tell me. Well, I had a pinhole leak in the supply line to my hose bibs in my crawl space in my property for 8 months.
Leaking.
Well, now it's a pinhole, so my water bill got a little high, but not super high. You know what I mean? So I didn't really catch it until there. But so that's the importance of these inspections and making sure you're thorough. And if you've got a property with a crawl space, you got to get down in there. I was guilty of it at that point too. Can't blame anybody but myself. But yeah, if you suspect, get in there, especially when it has something to do with water, because you never know what it is.
Sure.
When people are starting to pay their rent later and later, things of that sort, we're driving by. We want to know what's going on. So yeah, when we have any clue that something is not going right, we start driving by. You want to I think we've seen items outside before. Someone tried to ditch out,
Oh, yeah.
It's important. You can do a drive
to see if they have the U-Haul in the driveway.
Or a lot of times if you don't have a revert back to owner for your Excel or something, you can see that the tenant took their name off the gas and electric, things of that sort, They're like, you moving out?
Right. Okay. All right. We touched a little bit on this in a couple of slides ago, but we should probably hit it again, when your tenants are starting to exhibit bad behavior.
We spoke previously about, setting expectations for everyone. Something that comes to mind is a multifamily unit building. We have the ability to send a building text, And if I know one person is leaving their trash outside of their front door in the common area, I text the whole building. So I'm like, hey, friendly reminder not to leave your trash outside, to make sure it's disposed of in the proper receptacle, so that not only alerts everyone to the problem person, but also sets that expectations for all. I love that feature in our property management software. I can just text everybody. So nice to have. We talked about documenting everything. I mean, if you check tenants out more often than not, you're going to need it, but when you need it, you need to have it. You know, so I recommend having some sort of a software, some sort of a system for documenting things. Let's see, enforcing rules and tenants behave badly, non-payment of rent. Oh, call an attorney. Things are changing.
Right now, yes. At this point in time, that's the proper course of action.
Things are changing daily with do's and don'ts as far as trying to collect non-payment of rent and legal postings. So yes, consult an attorney. Definitely want to explain to tenants that they need to be good neighbors, you know, so they're not disturbing the quiet enjoyment of their other neighbors. We have a curfew in our lease, which sometimes people question that. And we often don't have to enforce it. It's 11 o'clock on the weekdays and midnight on the weekends. But if you are wasted outside at 2 p.m. hooting and hollering, I'm going to call you on Monday and I'm going to say, listen, there is a curfew. You can't be outside, you know, loud like that. So in your lease.
And we don't have that in our leases, do we, Jay?
We do, and it sounds silly, like someone has a curfew, they're paying rent, they should be able to do what they want. But when you're in a multi-family unit,
yeah.
If you're in a single family home and the neighbor next door, I often, when we're renting a property, I see the owner or the neighbor next door and I offer my card. I'm like, let me know if there's any issues, you know?
Right.
Sarah, doesn't the section in the lease called quiet enjoyment cover that? Where there's supposed to be friendly, neighborly, not overly disturbing noise and such like that? Quiet enjoyment?
Well, that clause, I don't know, sometimes doesn't go both ways, but they're entitled to quiet enjoyment of their unit, right? So if someone else is, you know, next door to them is disturbing them and they don't have quiet enjoyment, then that's an issue. And so you have to be able to enforce that for everybody. This goes back to, if the rules are in place for everybody, then everybody loves living there and everybody gets along.
Our lease states we give one warning. After the warning, we post the 10-day demand for compliance. I have to say, I think we're guilty of being too kind sometimes and giving more than one warning, but my feelings have changed on that. We need that documentation that they've been posted with the demand for compliance. So again, if they continue to do it, you know, there's a sequence of events until we can get them out.
So a couple people are asking, what do you do if somebody's smoking in the unit that there's no smoking allowed?
So we have this issue recently at a building. I think for Denver, I'm not sure, I think it probably varies per city or county maybe, but for Denver at least, there's no smoking within 15 feet of the building. So we have those signs posted outside. This lady was constantly complaining about smoke coming in her window because people were standing right outside and it's going right in her window, and she's a non-smoker. I would be bothered too. Cigarette butts all over the place, right? So we posted those signs. We posted them inside our walkways, the common areas, no smoking inside. Our leases do read that, but I think maybe you guys know this. I think if you have a multifamily unit building, it may have to be registered of some sort as officially non-smoking. Do you guys know that?
I do not know that, but you know, obviously we have no smoking posted in our leases. The issue is what happens when they're doing it anyway. So you would serve them with a 10-day notice. You would go back and inspect the property. You make sure that they're not continuing to do it. If they do continue to do it, then they got to go, basically.
Right.
If they can't live by the rules, they can't be there, because that's a lot of damage. You know, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get rid of that smoke smell in that unit.
Right.
Hills and new paint. Yes.
Well, that's if you don't have soft surfaces. I mean, we don't have any curtains or carpets in our units,
Right.
but if you did have carpet, et cetera, you may even
It's an
have to
honor.
replace that. So it's nothing to mess around with. If they can't figure it out and do it outside or do it, somewhere else, then they can't continue to be there. That's just part of being a landlord. You got to enforce the rules. Real quick, going backwards a little bit, somebody wanted to know what kind of property management software we use. So Sarah, you use Appfolio. We've discussed that already.
Mhm.
I use a online property management software called Tenant Cloud. And then Jay, you use a different one, don't you?
Yeah, I'm typing it in. It's Rent Tech Direct.
Rent Tech Direct. Okay, can you put in Tenant Cloud for me as well?
Yeah.
While you're typing that in. So then that should answer that question, and we can move to the next then. Anybody else have questions about what to do with bad behavior while I've got that up here? We will move forward then. All right, so ultimately, Mr. Smoker or Mrs. Smoker couldn't figure it out, so we have to figure out what to do with them.
So yes, evictions versus mutual rescissions of the lease. So evictions for us are worst case scenario. They hurt the owner more than anything. They are expensive. Legal fees are expensive. Evictions, typically furniture is left behind, things of that sort. If our residents are having a problem and we want them to leave, we present them with a mutual rescission of the lease if they are able to communicate effectively with what's going on. It's kind of a no harm, no foul type of a deal. It's just both sides agreeing that we're going to break that the lease is going to be mutually ended. Eviction, we say for people who won't communicate. We're stopping by the property and we're knocking, we're calling them, nothing, right? You have no other option at that point in time. But we do more often than not now really try to work something out with the tenant if it is a bad situation. I guess I do want to add, if you do a mutual rescission of the lease, it's basically a time and day that the tenant has agreed to be out by, and they have to return their keys to you, kind of the same they would do if they moved out in a normal situation. If you were to go to the property and you found a lot of furniture, valuables left behind, there's some additional paperwork that goes with that. So again, I would suggest consulting an attorney if that's ever an option for you versus an eviction. You need to know the full scope of what you need to do for it to be legal.
Gotcha. So basically the rescission is, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, let's just agree that this isn't working for either one of us. You're better off going to find another place. We're better off getting another tenant in here. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give you some time to find another place, typically, 30 days, something like that. Give them some time instead of booting them out and not giving them that time, right? We will, if you leave the place in good condition, we'll refund your full deposit. If you're a nice person throughout the process, we'll give you a good recommendation for the next guy, et cetera, right? You're trying to get this person to agree and move on their own, right? And that's going to be much less costly than going through an eviction, much less heartache and pain, stress on your part, et cetera. So that works in certain circumstances. It doesn't always work, but it does work very well in certain circumstances. I've had other clients of mine that will do cash for keys, so they'll actually pay the tenant some money to move out. I personally don't think that's necessary because you're already giving them a good out and giving them, an eviction looks terrible on their record.
Yeah.
For them to be evicted and have to explain that to the next place they try to rent, that's awful, right? So if you're helping them avoid that and you're helping them through this process by giving them time, et cetera, I don't feel like you should be paying them for that. But there are other people that do, and they feel it's very worth it because it's less confrontation from them and less money that they would have spent, in the process of hiring an attorney and doing it the other way. So it can be a really good tool to use in lieu of an eviction.
More often than not, those on our end have been because they can't pay rent.
Right.
It hasn't been for bad behavior.
Right.
And we do have a sense of urgency to get them out, so we differ a little bit there. We want you out ASAP. So when can you have your stuff cleared out? Kind of deal. How soon? Today's Thursday. I'm looking for Monday. You have the weekend. So we're a little different, I think, on that end. But we're also representing an owner. So this could potentially be your property. And again, you think, maybe that's a benefit or not a benefit of self-managing, but we're a little more quick with that.
Well, yeah, if they're not paying, then obviously time is of the essence at that point. My experience with this has been just a bad behavior, and not that because typically our tenants are Section 8, so I'm still getting a check. It's just I don't want you around anymore, right? So.
Well, one of the questions here for you, Sarah, is do you charge, what Ben is asking is, do you charge a penalty such as 2 months of rent and the lease early? Do you charge any kind of penalties?
So there would be a difference between a break lease fee, a breaking the lease, and a mutual rescission. My experience thus far has been for people who can't pay that we're doing the mutual rescission for, so they don't have the money. And in speaking with our attorney when we first started going this route, she said, I think typically it is with an option to receive their deposit back, less any cleaning and or damages. I don't think there's anything set in stone. It would be a mutual agreement, whatever you guys agreed upon. But if you agreed upon a monetary amount, you should write that in there.
Yeah.
I think for me, the quickest way to get them out would be to say no refund of the deposit, because more often than not, they're going to leave it dirty.
Yeah.
Giving them 3 days to get out. We just want all of their stuff out.
And in the instance of, bad behavior, I'm trying to get them out of there. And so I'm not as interested in their money as I am in them leaving. Right. So.
Depends on the circumstances.
Yeah. And then what do you do if what if it looks like someone has abandoned their unit, Sarah? What's the course of action? What if it looks like someone has abandoned their unit? What's the course of action there?
So if there's items of value left behind, you should do a formal eviction. Mm-hmm. If there's anything of value left behind. If there's only trash, you should be able to take back over your unit. Those keys, I think, are really important. If they left the keys on the counter, we know they're 100% out. If you know someone is, again, back to that mutual rescission, there's something called a waiver of claims to abandoned property. The way to protect yourself the best is if you know they're leaving and they're going to leave items of value behind, you should present that form up front. Waiver of claims to abandoned property, so you can remove their items. If you do a mutual rescission of the lease and you show up and it's full of valuable items, you still have to do an eviction if you don't have that waiver of claims form.
And if you do have them sign a waiver of whatever you just said, then they're for sure going to leave stuff behind. As you just said, I'm expecting you to leave stuff behind and I want to be able to get rid of it.
It is. So there are, but at least you're not paying 5 guys to do a sheriff eviction plus the sheriff.
Right. Well, that is the risk you take with a mutual rescission, right? Is that is that the day of move out comes and they didn't move out. Because then you still have to start the eviction process from that point, and you already gave them time.
Yep.
The exact scenario happened 3 years ago when I went to Europe for the first time ever. My tenant was supposed to be out the night before I left. She left all of her stuff in a 3-bedroom place, moved back to New York. So I contacted Phil Kloss while I was in London or wherever I was at the time. And he said that I had to go through an official eviction because she doesn't show up for court. Then you have to get all of her stuff on the front like we do here in Colorado. Not every state is like this, but here in Colorado, you have to get their stuff on the front where they can get their stuff back. That's why you do the eviction.
For 24 hours.
Yeah, it has to go out there for 24 hours. And it's basically a free-for-all for all the neighbors, whoever can take whatever they want, but it gives the former tenant the right to get their stuff back. That's why you have to do an eviction. And it's not fun.
I had that lovely experience this morning. This is the first eviction in I don't know how long. Everything in the house.
Yeah, for newbie landlords out there, I've been doing this 20 years, and I think I've evicted 3 people out of hundreds of tenants. So again, you got to be choosy in the front end, just like any good choice. But if you get better at it, which you will, you shouldn't have to do too many evictions. That's the point.
I've never had to do one.
I mean, I guess it depends how many numbers you have. It's a numbers game, but
Totally, it's a numbers game. It's a property type thing as well. But yeah. All right, guys, we got about 10 minutes left here. I want to get through this last slide and then answer whatever remaining questions we have. Okay, so the bonus topic, self-managing versus hiring a manager. I think we've talked about a few of these things as we've gone through this presentation. Obviously, Sarah, go ahead, sell yourself. You're the property manager here, and there's a lot of bonuses to using a property manager, a professional property manager.
We have so many resources at our fingertips. You don't have to go searching for things. Just knowledge of best practices, no emotional attachment. We talked about with Brad and Jay. It's really hard when you're emotionally attached to your unit. I think things go awry many times. That's often how we get clients, just too emotionally attached. And they've given their tenants so much leeway in paying rent late, not enforcing anything. So we take that emotional attachment out of it. Our property management software, again, I just can't say enough about it. It's made our life so much easier for documentation purposes, for advertising purposes. And just having someone to look out for you and your property, it's not easy to do. Many of us have, many of our owners have full-time jobs, have children. It's hard. It's two jobs. So if you don't have the time to do it right, I would suggest hiring a property manager. If you find yourself in a sticky situation, we're always here to help. We just try to alleviate any stress involved with the situation.
So, the whole point of this presentation is if you're the kind of person that manages your own properties and you can follow these best practices and you can ensure that you're doing these, then great. If you're unable to follow these best practices for whatever reason, time, your personality, your whatever it is, right? Then you should be looking to hire a property management company, right? That Sarah's got access to a lot of resources, for maintenance and all kinds of things that go on. And if you're managing your own, you have to find those people yourself. You have to do all that stuff yourself. So if you have the time and the ability and the mental mindset to be able to do this and do this right, then that's great. And that's what we're trying to teach you here is how to do this right. And if you don't, you're better off hiring somebody else, just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think when a lot of my clients come to me and they're having problems, it's more often than not, it's mindset. As far as, they're $300 a month under market rent because they like their tenant and they get along with them. They don't want to have any confrontation, so they don't want to be at market. We're always at market. You should always be at market. Why wouldn't you be? And they don't want to lose anybody. So there's a lot of emotion, like Sarah says, that comes into play when you're self-managing, that a property manager just takes that right out. Let's see, we got a question here. Let's see. Let's see, hang on. Just somebody else talking about what property information they use, rentapplication.net. For backgrounds, credit applications, all that kind of thing. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Let me just go through and see if we had any other questions. What company is Sarah with? What company are you with, Sarah? How do we get a hold of you?
Sure. So Performance Property Management, we should have put a link to our website on this on the slide here.
Type that in, Jay.
Yes, so we'll add that here, but we start at 10% of the monthly rent. We try to be all inclusive. That includes all of our inspections, as many as needed, lease renewals, things of that sort. So it's we don't have any hidden fees in that 10%. It is negotiable if you're a multifamily unit owner and you bring in more than one property. We definitely take into account the monthly rent that you bring in. And the proximity to our office and our main area that we manage. We're throughout the Denver Metro West area. I think there was something else to that question. So just the monthly.
The question is, what company are you with? You more than answered that.
I saw something else pop up about how much we charge.
Oh, okay, that was on a different platform. Do you do short-term or Airbnbs?
We do not do Airbnbs, we do short-term.
Okay. And then, see if there are any other questions on the Q&A. We're getting questions on both the chat and the Q&A, so trying to keep up with that has been a challenge. Just real quick, do you always require your tenants to have renter's insurance, Sarah?
We do. We even offer it through our software, but we do recommend they get it from an outside source because we only offer liability insurance, property liability.
All right, if you have a tenant that applies and doesn't get the unit for whatever reason, do you refund their application fee?
We do not. It is disclosed on the online application that the $40 fee is non-refundable, and we send out a letter of denial.
Okay, and for me, when I'm dealing especially with a Section 8 tenant and I understand that they are financially burdened to begin with, and if they are applying for 10 different places, that $40 fee becomes $400. If I take the application fee and I don't just tell them straight off the bat that they're not going to work out, because I try to just be as upfront as I can with people to avoid all that, then if they didn't get it, I would probably refund that to them.
We also aren't taking 10 applications at once.
Right.
We're going through the first applicant, and so I guess on that note, if there's a second applicant waiting in line and everything works out with the first, yes, there's a possibility we refund their money.
Okay. And then do we have a comparison of different counties in Section 8? So there's on slide, what's the slide, Jay? Is slide 2 or 3 there, 1 or 2, that we had a link to the HUD fair market rents?
It's number 2. It's slide number 7, but it's number 2 is how do you determine what to charge for rent?
Right. So do you have a comparison of different counties in Section 8? In Denver, it takes months to get in the inspection. And on one property, one social worker said the property was a 4-bedroom. Another claimed it was a 2. I don't, without knowing your specific property, and maybe there wasn't an egress window or a closet or something, and they didn't want to consider that a bedroom. Right. I don't know, and it could vary based on the housing authority that what they would consider to be a bedroom versus not a bedroom, et cetera. So that's more of a specific question, and that was from Barbara. Barbara, if you want to reach out to one of us individually, we might be able to help you with that one.
Door, closet, egress window if it's not the main level.
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, that's all that we have for now. I really appreciate everybody joining us, and we will make a recording of this, and we'll get this recording out to the folks that signed up, and have a wonderful day.
And
Thank you
Brad,
so much for
don't
joining.
show the last couple slides. The next one is we have the landlord-tenant law firms, just so people know this.
Okay. Yep.
Oh, yes.
My bad.
We have that. And
So,
then
for COVID-related issues or anything going on right now that you have a need for an attorney, these are the three that we would tell you do business here in Denver at least. I mean, if you're in California or someplace else, I don't know. You just have to do your own research.
yeah.
So
They send out very helpful regular information, just email blasts. So I'd sign up for one of those.
okay.
And then the last slide had our website information on there as well.
Oops.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jay.
everybody.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Eric.